Baldr was one of the most beloved of all the gods, the son of Odin, chief of the gods, and the benevolent sorceress goddess Frigg. Baldr was a generous, joyful, and courageous character who gladdened the hearts of all who spent time with him. When, therefore, he began to have ominous dreams of some grave misfortune befalling him, the fearful gods appointed Odin to discover them meaning. Baldr's father wasted no time in mounting his steed Sleipnir and riding to the underworld to consult the dead seers, whom he knew to be especially wise in such matters. When, in one of his countless disguises, he reached the cold and misty underworld, he found the halls arrayed in splendor, as if some magnificent feast were about to occur. Odin woke the seers and questioned her concerning this festivity. She responded that the guest of honor was to be none other than Baldr. She merrily recounted how the god would meet his doom, stopping only when she realized, from the desperate nature of Odin's entreaties, who this disguised wanderer truly was. And, indeed, all that she prophesied would come to pass. Odin returned in sorrow to Asgard, the god's celestial stronghold, and told his companions what he had been told. Frigg, yearning for any chance of saving her treasured son, however remote, went to every entity in the cosmos, living or non-living, and obtained oaths not to harm Baldr. After these oaths were secured, the gods made sport out of the situation. They threw sticks, rocks, anything else on hand at Baldr, and everyone laughed as these things bounced off and left the shining god unharmed. The wily and disloyal Loki sensed an opportunity for mischief. In disguise, he went to Frigg and asked her, "Did all things swear oaths to spare Baldr from harm?" "Oh yes," the goddess replied. "Everything except the mistletoe. But the mistletoe is so small and innocent a thing, I felt it superfluous to ask for it. What harm could it do to my son?" Immediately upon hearing this, Loki departed, located the mistletoe, carved a spear out of it, brought it to where the gods were playing their new favorite game. He approached the blind god, Baldr, Old Norse for slayer, and said, "You must feel quite left out, having to sit back here away from the merriment, not being given a chance to show Baldr the honor of proving his invincibility." The blind god concurred. "Here," Loki said, handing him the shaft of mistletoe, "I will point your hand in the direction where Baldr stands, and you throw this branch at him." So, Baldr threw the mistletoe. It pierced the god straight through, and he fell down dead on the spot. The gods found themselves unable to speak as they trembled in anguish and fear. They knew that this event was the first presage of Ragnarok, the downfall and death, not just of themselves, but of the very cosmos they maintained. At last, Frigg composed herself enough to ask if there were any among them who were brave, loyal, and compassionate enough to journey to the land of the dead and offer Hel, the death goddess, a ransom for Baldr's release. Hermod, an obscure son of Odin, offered to undertake this mission. Odin instructed Sleipnir to bear Hermod to the underworld. Off he went. The gods arranged a lavish funeral for their fallen friend. They turned Baldr's ship, Hringhorni, a ship with a circle at its stem, into a pyre fitting for a great king. When the time came to launch the ship out to sea, however, the gods found the ship stuck in the sand, and they themselves were unable to force it to budge. After many failed attempts, they summoned the brawniest being in the cosmos, a certain giantess named Hirokin, withered by fire. Hirokin arrived at Asgard riding a wolf and using poisonous snakes for reins. She dismounted, walked to the prow of the ship, and gave it such a mighty push that the land quaked as Hringhorni was freed from the strand. As Baldr's body was carried onto the ship, his wife, Nanna, was overcome with such grief that she died there on the spot and was placed on the pyre beside her husband. The fire was kindled, and Thor hallowed the flames by holding his hammer over them. Odin laid upon the pyre his ring and drove near, leaned low, and whispered silently into his dead son's ears. And then Baldr's horse was led into the flames. All kinds of beings from throughout the 9 worlds attended this ceremony. Gods, giants, elves, dwarves, valkyries, and others. Together they stood and mourned as they watched the burning ship disappear over the ocean. Meanwhile, Hermod rode 9 nights through ever darker and deeper valleys on his quest to rescue the part of Baldr that had been sent to hell. When he came to the river Yor, roaring, Modgud, furious battle, the giantess who guards the bridge asked him his name and his purpose, adding that it was strange that his footfalls were as thundering as those of an entire army, especially since his face still had the color of the living. He answered to her satisfaction and she allowed him to cross over into hell as well. Sleipnir leapt over the wall around that doleful land. Upon entering and dismounting, Hermod spotted Hell's throne and Baldr, pale and downcast, sitting at the seat of honor next to her. Hermod spent the night there, and when morning came, he pleaded with Hel to release his brother, telling her of the great sorrow that all living things, especially the gods, felt in his absence. Hel responded, "If this is so, then let everything in the cosmos weep for him, and I will send him back to you. But if any refuse, he will remain in my presence." Hermod rode back to Asgard and told these tidings to the gods, who straight away sent messengers throughout the worlds to bear this news to all their inhabitants. And indeed, everything did weep for Baldr. Everything, that is, save for one giantess, Tok, or Things, who was none other than Loki in another disguise. Tok coldly told the messengers, "Let Hel hold what she has." And so Baldr was condemned to remain in Hel's darkness, dampness, and cold. Never again would he grace the lands of the living with his gladdening light and exuberance. Loki had always been more of a burden than a help to the other gods and goddesses. But after his contriving the death of Baldr, and ensuring that the fair god would remain in the underworld until the cosmos is destroyed during Ragnarok, he went about slandering the gods at every opportunity. At last the gods decided that his abuse had become too much, and they went to capture him. Loki ran far away from Asgard. At the peak of a high mountain, he built himself a house with 4 doors so that he could watch for his pursuers from all directions. By day, he turned himself into a salmon and hid beneath a nearby waterfall. By night, he sat by his fire and weaved a net for fishing for his food. The far-seeing Odin perceived where Loki now dwelt, and the gods went after him. When Loki saw his former friends approaching, he threw the net in the fire and hid himself in the stream in his salmon form, so as to leave no traces of himself or his activities. When the gods arrived, they saw the net smoldering in the fire, and they surmised that the wily shapeshifter had changed himself into the likeness of those he intended to catch for himself. The gods took up the twine Loki had been using and crafted their own net, and they made their way to the stream. Several times they cast their net into the stream, and each time the salmon barely eluded them. At last, the fish made a bold leap downstream to swim to the sea. But while in the air, he was caught by Thor. The salmon writhed in the war god's grasp, but Thor held him fast by his tail fins. This is why, to this day, the salmon has a slender tail. Loki was then taken in his regular form to a cave. The gods then brought in Loki's 2 sons and turned one into a wolf, who promptly killed his brother, strewing his entrails across the cave floor. Loki was then fastened to 3 rocks in the cave with the entrails of his slain son, which the gods had turned into iron chains. Skadi placed a poisonous snake on a rock above his head, where it dripped the venom into his face. But Loki's faithful wife, Sigyn, sat by his side with a bowl, and she held up to the snake's mouth to catch the poison. But every so often, the bowl became full, and Sigyn would have to leave her husband's side to dispose of its contents. At which point, the drops that fell onto the unrepentant god's face would cause him to shake violently, which is what brings about earthquakes in Midgard, the world of humanity. And this was the lot of Loki and Sigyn, until, as fated, Loki will break free from his chains at Ragnarok to assist the giants in destroying the cosmos.
Thank you, my friends, for joining me for our story today. Your time is very precious to me. If you enjoyed our story, please like the video, subscribe to my channel, and turn on notifications, and share our little get-togethers with your friends. All of these things are incredibly helpful to get our stories out to more friends. I had such a wonderful time with you all today, and I hope you'll join me again tomorrow, where I will read a new tale and invite you once again to stay a while and listen.